Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Rutherford County School Board meeting. Tonight's subject is the budget and the budget only. First order of business, the Pledge of Allegiance, led tonight by Board Member Jim Estes.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome again, everyone. Tonight's subject is the budget, and we'll start and probably end with comments from Mr. Sandvig.
Colorblind guy.
They're on there, though.
County Finance Director sent me some estimates over the weekend. We still have nothing on our largest local revenue, the property tax, for next year. So in my estimate, I took that $214 million BEP guesstimate, and I took the property tax. We have collected over 100%. So I plugged in this year's property tax collections through the end of March. We don't get a lot April, May, June, but we will get some. And if you look at the third, fourth line, the one shortfall, revenues versus expenditures, from this draft budget, top line up there, $390,243,628. Estimated revenue, and that should have been 418, sorry about that. $367 million leaves a shortfall, revenues versus expenditures of $23,243,628. My dark dashed line indicates the headings don't apply when we drop to the rest. So now I'm looking at our fund balance, our unassigned fund balance, money that is available for us to use to fund this 2018-19 budget. So I'm starting at our July 1st balance, $23,454,722. I have a conservative and I have a moderate. I don't have an optimistic set of numbers yet. That it's too early with just looking at March numbers. The decreases we had or anticipate to this fund balance number, we've transferred $4,401,000 to the building program because construction costs have been coming in high. We have committed to $2.5 million being moved to committed for education, committed for the operating costs when we open Rockdale High. So that drops us to $16,553,722. Now, fund balance, and this throws the non-accountants, if we have unbudgeted revenues, they increase fund balance. If we have unexpended budgeted expenditures, and we will. Unexpended, if it's an expenditure you've got in your budget and you don't spend it, that will also increase. So looking based on what we know at this point, I'm very comfortable, $2.7 million in unbudgeted growth in revenues. That's more than enough to cover our $2.5 million that we need to move to committed for Rockdale High. We're covered there. Unexpended items, the $5,480,000 is about 1.5%. I think our unexpended items will probably be higher than that. It's hard to tell in March. There are a lot of things that we buy April, May, June, preparing for the next year because we won't have them in time when school starts in August if we don't order them. That takes us to an estimated range of the fund balance available for the, and I'm sorry, it's the 2018-19, not 15-16, $24,733,000. If you look over in the next column in my moderate numbers, I put in unbudgeted growth in revenues of $3.9 million, unexpended items of $7.2 million. That takes me to $27,653,000. So those are my two estimates. I think we will come in better than that. After we close May, that's when Lisa and I will start to have a better idea of where we will actually come in. So, first numbers in brackets, the state minimum, if we use any fund balance, which we have since we opened our 2 middle schools during the turn down, then you have to have 3%. So we have to have $11,707,309 when our budget is at this $390 million figure. I strongly recommend, I will strongly plead to at least keep 4%. When we have an economic downturn or a slower rate of growth than we have experienced, we need that more money in fund balance to provide a cushion. There are 2 local revenues. We've talked about the local sales tax. Last year and the year before, we were growing 5, 6, 7, 8% over the previous year. We budgeted 5, but that 5 turned into 4.5 with where we actually came in. So our budget, the way I view it, is 4.5% more than our actual local sales tax receipts last year. The sales tax revenue we got in March, and it lags a month. That dropped our year-to-date rate down to about close to 3.7%.
Over last year.
Over last year, where we were running 5, 6, 7, 8. Lisa's number, her estimate, she put in a 2% increase. I won't feud with that until maybe if we see recovery with the April, May, June numbers, we might have a little latitude there. That one concerns me. A small revenue number for us, over $2 million, is the business license tax. I'm sorry, the business tax. I always get license in my mind on that one. That one, and we haven't, with the collection schedule, we get most of that in May. But when I look at our March numbers, we are down, as of March, which is, again, it's maybe 20% of the total, we are down 30% under last year's. So there's some local things that we need to get more comfortable before we increase any of these revenue estimates. I'm trying to be conservative. That I really think we need to keep 4. I don't mind having 5, but I think we really need to keep 4 since we're regularly using fund operations. So the next to the last line are projected, and I say 17, 18 here because projecting where we will end June 30th, open July 1, same thing. Between $9,124,000 and $12,044,000. I think we will probably wind up higher than that. But if I had to make a commitment on April 18th, that would be the range I'd be looking at. Our shortfall, if you look on the line above the heavy dashed line, is $23 million. yeah, I would think we could fund between 9 and 12 million from fund balance. But the thing we have to remember, yeah, and just, this is, we have been pretty successful. We've kind of been in an an upward curve since we opened at Whitworth Buchanan and Oakland Middle. The amount we were funding from fund balance, it went up and down. It crossed 10 million, but we have been, our actual revenues, when we closed the books in July for the year ended June 30th, our actual revenues and our actual expenditures have been coming in very close to one another. So as long as your budget and fund balance at a level and your expenditures and revenues are doing well, it's, you know, that doesn't matter. But if we reach that point where our revenues are coming in substantially, our actual revenues substantially under our expenditures, you're making that situation will make the next year out. The next year out when we open Rockvale High and Rocky Ford, much worse. And we've got to keep in mind that year and 2 years out because of the commitments we know we have. So there's my bad news on fund balance.
So bottom line is we're about 12 million short based on your moderate projections?
Based on my moderate projection, yes, sir.
See, the issue is because of when Oakland and Whitworth Buchanan, we've been using ending fund balance to balance the budget. And we got down as low as about 6 million.
Yeah, 6.7, the last number here, that's what we used to balance this year's budget.
So what you've got is you're going to have less, you know, if you have to do that again, and we will, because we don't have a large ending fund balance because of having to go back into building programs and put more money in. That really begins to look at our expenditure side that there's not much room for growth. Yeah. You're going to have to handle the growth of students and stuff. I don't know how much extra monies we're going to have flexibility with. Not a lot. It doesn't.
You've warned us over the years that eventually that bird was going to come home to roost.
We have to be very careful with it, not let that number get too large. If we weren't opening Rockvale High and another elementary school for the fall of 2019, August of 2019, it wouldn't be as concerning a situation. But yeah, it's something we really have to watch in presenting the budget this year to the commission and deciding what level is a sustainable level.
In your time here, have you seen this much difference in projection?
Actually, and sorry I didn't change my dates right. The last time I did this analysis was for 2015, 2016. That was the year there was a significant and already planned property tax increase. The last time I handed this analysis out. So I look at this all the time, but we don't always do it. It's more for the accountants. Just wanting to, we have to be careful. Having the gap 23 million, and again, I think that'll go up. I think we will cross, I hope we will cross 370 million in revenues without a tax increase. I don't think there's any way we'll hit 375 unless there's something I'm not expecting in the BEP. And
you're going to have you'll have them, which you can't spend it any other way, but you'll have that safety money.
Right, but that'll be money in, money out, non-recurring.
Right, I mean, it's a wash.
Yeah.
It changes your revenue number. But
and our expenditures by the same amount.
Same amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you still have to, retain the 4%, 3 to 4% on that.
It would probably, there are some categories you could probably not include in that 3 to 4%.
So you said that Lisa Nolan, instead of, we talked 5% sales tax increase, and we're really, last month was 3.7.
Yeah.
Hoping to get it up somewhere over 4.
Yeah.
But she is thinking about using for the county general next year 2.
2% is what she put in at this point. And 2% on a $60 million revenue figure is 100 and, I'm not thinking well tonight.
But 2% of 360 million.
Yeah,
Well, of the sales tax, 2%.
yeah, on the sales tax of,
That's still a chunk.
yeah, it's still a chunk, but it's not the difference between looking at a $12 million versus an $8 million funding challenge. As Mr. Odom has reminded y'all, and we've talked, this is the reappraisal year. That's one of the reasons we don't have any estimate for the local property tax yet. And depending on what the county commission does in dropping back to the certified rate, that is our great unknown. We will probably not know that until June 26th.
They always have dropped back, haven't they?
Yeah, and the years that they have, generally, the next year they've had to increase.
Right.
Yeah. But,
They have to adopt the certified rate and then inform the public
yeah.
if they do anything other than certified. And certified, you have some growth where new houses were built, and that'll come in. But other than that, people listening to a certified rate means unless you've added a room to your house or done something that would have changed that appraisal, you won't pay any more property tax next year than you did this year on a certified rate. Even though the value is up, they lower the pennies per hundred to where you come out with the same. So it's up to the commission to make that particular decision.
Well, let's summarize this, if you would, in just two figures.
Okay.
Well, let me ask you a question. What did we ask the county commission to give us last year? What figure?
367?
Right here,
Well,
right?
It was less than that to start with, but more revenues came in during the year.
Our starting budget last year, because I left out the transfer to the building program. If I take out we were more 364 million was our starting point last year.
Okay.
That was the budget.
And our starting point this year approximately will be?
Well, right now, in the draft, we've given you 390.
Okay.
Do you remember what the increase was?
Well, the state, last year said 4% raise, so the monies that'll come to us to improve salaries will be virtually half of what they added going into last year. I mean, it'll be a little more money because you got more employees, but in essence, the money coming from the state that jacked up that number, won't be as high from the state.
So if last year was 364, do you recall what the previous year was?
We wound up 340. Our actual expenditures were 345 the previous year, but our budget was a little higher than that. I can look it up.
Well, it was an increase of 20 million the year before.
Over actual expenditure.
Okay.
Kind of tells you what you're
Budget to
asking.
budget, it was less.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
The amended budget, I do have that right at hand, for 16, 17, sorry. I wind up with too many years on my mind. Our amended budget, excluding transfers, was about 345. Our amended budget, but we also had transfers in there. So, yeah, it was a $19 million increase, excluding the transfers.
Let's look at another little figure a little bit. At this sheet he's having you look at, and you look at that bottom, that 6,755,000. That's kind of what we've got a little bit to work with. But if you'll pull your sheet again on this one, this sheet, the line sheet for expenditures, and this is what we've been talking about since we started this process. And there's another change that's occurred here, and that change is this TASER index and TASER is that ability to pay. It's the TASER Fox index, comes out of UT, Rutherford County's ability to pay. And so they're upgrading Rutherford County's ability to pay, which means our slice of the pie for BEP goes down if you have a higher ability to pay. If your county has a higher ability to pay, your pie slice goes down. You understand that. So when we were talking to you 2 or 3 weeks ago, almost a month ago, we were looking at $1.25 million.
Yes.
And the latest thing we're hearing, and he may know when he hears this weekend for sure, based on this conference, we think that may actually be doubled and be more near 2.5.
Yeah. Our TASER number, Mary Ann had, it has gone up. The CBER number, they were still waiting on, but are thinking that is coming in this week.
It usually comes in close to the same, typically, because they do 50% TASER and 50% Fox to come up with that estimate. So you take, if we're going to get, based on what we should get, if we're going to get $2.5 million less there, and you take this page when you go down, remember we said before, the state changed from what we have to put in to retirement for our people. It's an increase of 1.38%. That's about $2 million additional dollars. And the health insurance right now, from the county health insurance, our share for our employees is going to go up about $3.75 million. So in essence, in some ways, you can add the 2.5, the 2, and the 3.75, and then all of a sudden you're looking at $8.25 million. When I look at $8.25 million and I look at his $6 million over here on this side, it gets me nervous. You know, what's the problem? What's so different this year is that retirement and health insurance hitting us. That's the issue, and maybe we can convince, and I'm sure the commission's going to deal with this, but we may have to try to convince the commission, hey folks, this is new money's been requested to even stay where we are. So could we get some help in doing that? Roughly now, 1 penny on the tax rate brings us $570,000 our share.
580 something, I think it went.
Okay, 580 something our share. Remember, we share with the city of Murfreesboro. It's over 600 total penny, and that's what the commission, of course, will be doing, setting that when they do the other. So it's extremely tight, and I hope it doesn't turn out as tight as it's looking like it is. Now, that's my issue. Numbers are numbers. You do have to pay attention.
Even as, and that $2.5 million number in red, once I have the April estimate, I can go back and calculate the cumulative 2-year change. There's a chance it's going to come out more than $2.5 million. That's just a very loose estimate at this point. But the difference we've got this year, the big difference, other than the BEP number, is we were seeing such strong local revenue growth in recent years, and that is clearly leveling off. It might pick up again, but it hasn't through the end of February cash, with some of which we get in March. So
what we've got to do is decide how much of Indian fund balance we can apply towards next year's budget, and then how do we deal with these things on that first page, the increase in retirement, the health insurance, and less money per pupil. Well, it won't be less money because they got a 2% raise built in, but our pie slice going down by about $2.5 million, put it that way. So it's extremely tight. Tightest I've seen in just my 6th year. I don't think
we've had the
seen
economic
this.
upswing, it's the tightest we've had. Yeah, just different things coming together in the same year.
I'm not saying we're going to have to cut positions, do anything like that Mr. Watson did one time. Years, we're not there, no panics or anything like that. But every once in a while you run into a year where you're almost in a status quo. We may be in a status quo, and I'll just say that up front. if revenues don't change or something else change, I mean, numbers are numbers again. I mean,
When do you, again, reiterate when you think you will have some numbers that you're more confident in?
The April estimate of the BEP is very approximate, but with having the TASER and the SEBR numbers in, the split between what is state and what is local, those numbers should be pretty fixed. There will still be ups and downs. We also, another funding uncertainty is because of the way the state is having us handle alternative school students. The numbers we're showing in EIS, we think, are too low in the sixth.
and the state knows that, so
And
they
the
have,
state knows that.
yeah, they
but
say they
there is
may
no
do some
adjustment.
hand calculations. Well, they're saying they may.
Yeah, but at this point, they have made no adjustment for that. So, you know, again, I hope I'm too conservative in the revenue numbers.
If I remember correctly, my first year, what we had to move in from ending fund balance, again, mainly because we'd opened the two middle school, was close to $11 million.
Yeah, we've crossed 10 million before.
And one of my commitments was, that's like Washington, you're spending more than you got. We need to bring that down.
Yeah.
So, but we've had to put more money in because of cost overruns in buildings. The commission made us purchase property, some there, and so when that happens, like last year, we're in the $6 million range in that deficit. So, I mean, I don't want to pitch Mr. Spurlock a big hole to start with, but it's a problem. It's a hard way to dig out when you run into cost over, building program costs and high growth like we're seeing. And remember, for the public that's listening to us, ADM funding runs a year behind. So the house that's built today, the taxes are due on it February of 2019.
Well,
Now, come August, who has to give them a textbook and a seat and put them on a bus if they want to ride? We have to do that. But it runs behind. So if you're a growing system, you're penalized. If you're losing students, like some in the East and West,
that's
there's a
kind of-
little buffer.
They have largely ended that buffer, though, more so than I thought we would see.
With the growth monies, if you get growth.
With the declines, it used to be, there's still some hold harmless, but it is much less generous than it used to be.
With the school
One of our
system,
sessions was how to cope with that.
with the systems losing money.
Yeah, with the systems they're losing.
And we haven't factored in here what growth we have. Will we get, again, that,
Yeah.
how much, did it have 15 million total growth this year?
Actually, it's
Is
up
it
to
20?
37 million.
Okay. Everybody that's got 2%, 1%?
They are fully
They
funded
tell you.
this year.
Okay.
But when they say fully funding growth, for us, that will be probably a little over $4,000 per student. That is not covering our state funding per student, but it's so much better than it was. We had one year where across the state, it was only 10 million.
Yeah.
And that,
So that figure is not in here. There will be some
there will be some.
growth funds. You don't know that until
We
very
won't
often
know-
July.
We will not
June
know
to July.
this year's number until the last week in June.
So we don't try to necessarily anticipate that to the commission because, again, you don't know how many districts are going to exceed that 1%. And when they do, how big your pie slice will be. But
As one of the big unknowns that Mary Ann Dursky's department has is they're dependent on the ADMs as they've been entered by the different systems that have come across from EIS. So as those get more accurate, you can, if you had accurate numbers, you could see yours go up or down depending on what problems other systems have. But once we get April estimate, we'll have a better number. Even though it may change, we'll pieces.
this, the 8-page document then is really the same that you've seen before, except we did stick on page 1 all of these potentials. And of course, we don't have revenue change, the property tax change, that could be a plus. It won't be a minus, you're gonna get more from property tax, but how well does it match if they do if they do the certified rate, it would just maybe cover, and there's nothing extra. Lower sales tax, he's already beginning to lower from 5% estimate down to, and it's us to decide how much we want to put in as a guesstimate for the sales tax growth. I know very often we try to stay pretty close to what the county does. So if we don't have to, because she may be low, but then if it doesn't come in, then you're on the lower side. The Title II funding reduction is going to be okay. So that's not going to be, we did get that figure back, so that question mark's not going to turn negative on us. So you've got to address the growth in per pupil. And everything else then becomes, what can we do for improving and safety and everything else, but you got to address the growth. A few extra buses, extra teachers, extra textbooks.
Well, we're going to walk away from this meeting tonight based on what you know at this point. At this point, either through your moderate computation or prediction, we're going to be 12 million short. Through your conservative estimates, we're going to be 15 million short. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Now, and again, I think we will see some upward growth on the revenue side. Hopefully, this draft is on the high end. Generally, we don't come across any unknowns that make us really change numbers on the expenditure side at this point, increase them. Generally, we're on the downward side for expenditures because decisions are made by y'all not to include certain things, or in looking at estimate, well, maybe we can be a little more aggressive in terms of a lower cost. There aren't a lot of those that tend to come up.
Well, as Mr. Young pointed out at our last meeting too, adding it up, we know that over 80% of our budget is personnel. Yeah. And just adding up what we had to last time, you had it over a little bit over $20 million, if you remember. So we have little, it appears, little flexibility in what we can do. The only thing you can do is reduce your budget considerations there. What do you take off that you wanted to do? That's where you're going to be.
It's going to be hard to come up with $12 million. So. I just glanced through here. I just don't see $12 million jumping out at me here. So.
I know. I think Jeff, I know Jeff, well, Sam Vigil well enough know he's a conservative estimator. But even if he is, I don't see a lot of it erased. No. You know, again, the big insurance increase and the retirement increase and the change in the BEP is huge. When you get all that in 1 year, just when the stars align, and they have here, it's a huge reduction.
You only have a 2% in for the teachers' increase. That,
correct.
And we hold that now becomes a question too.
I hope we can at least hold that, but because we really need to be looking at 3%.
Be competitive.
Yeah. But we also have to remember that 2% raise that is added to the teacher pay component. By the time we look at our average number of our average teacher salary and the number of teachers we have over this BEP funding number, basically we will fund at least half of any state raise out of local funds. When the legislators get complaints, well, you're not sending the money through, well, and I say we, I'm not saying our legislators, but we do send it through. We do put it to teacher pay, but you're not giving us funding to do a 2% raise for our teachers. You're giving us funding to do a 1% raise, and everything else has to come out of local.
Mr. Schaefer called me the other day and asked me what figures we were kind of using per teacher. And I told him we do the 62.5 that includes his fringe benefit. Because the numbers he was doing, what does Bradford County pay for the base salaries and all. But by the time we add the retirement piece and the insurance piece, and some people choose insurance, some don't, some choose the family instead of the single. So your numbers go up and down. But 62.5 is a pretty good number for us, and that is the figure that I gave him. But if you look at the insurance, it's on, the line item thing we gave you last time, you didn't produce another one tonight.
I brought copies if.
It's really not changed much. I mean, it's very little. If y'all wanted another one, but
We didn't do an update.
this line item.
Yeah, what page?
The line item would be on page 2 of 4 on the line item. I'm not sure all of them have that. If they want to do it, you can give it to them.
I've got none.
If you look at page 2 of 4. The page 2 of 4 there, you see the total increase from medical insurance to us this year is really $4,444,000. It's not 3 3/4, but this figure, when you separate out for all of the new positions and all, when you separate those out, then that figure is all of a sudden is almost $4.5 million increase. But that's built into the 62,500 on the other page. We didn't want to double count it. So, and the same, when you look at state retirement, it's not $2 million, the increase is $3,380,000 when all new positions are included in that. Which is, medical insurance 10.3% and state retirement 16.7% increase that you have no control over. The legislature tells you how much you have to contribute. And you can't do much about medical. Well, I think I'm kind of going over what I was going to do.
Yep, go ahead.
I don't know whether tonight you want to give us further direction on this summary sheet, the budget considerations. If not, if you want to think about it some more, we do have to meet again, but the next meeting, around the 1st of May.
Yes, our next meeting's May 1st, but we have to file our budget
23rd?
like Monday, I think, with the courthouse so they can be consolidating. So if we can either file, and I doubt I've made a $40,000 net change. I've tweaked a few things, probably up in general, just some things I became aware of, nothing earth-shaking. But I didn't do a new consolidation. But I would, if y'all want us to file this, I would reconsolidate it and give those numbers to the courthouse, or if y'all, whatever.
What he's saying, if there's anything on these pages 1 through 8 that you want to change on this sheet, we're going to, if you got anything you want to change, he can make that adjustment. I think in all likelihood we're going to be revisiting it sometime to try to get closer.
I mean, this is not etching anything in stone. This is just giving them a preliminary number.
One of the discussions Mr. Odom and I have each year, and you've seen it in your years, there is a point, getting to that point where the increase you're asking for strikes them as in that an acceptable enough range where
they'll kind of say if we have to add a penny or 2 or 3, maybe we can do that if we're also having to add the county general.
Right.
If you're too far off, sometimes they simply say, no, you're going to have to go back to this. But again, you're paying psychology there about
it's
how
early
people
in the
look
process,
at it.
but
we can make a good pitch for a lot of things we've got here.
Yeah.
But some of them are improvements when you talk about adding an additional psychologist or something. But you can't change the number of ESL teachers. That's a ratio. That's a state ratio. It is what it is.
I don't find anything on this document, page 1 through 8, that is excessive, unnecessary, or inappropriate. I think every single one of these things should be presented with the full support and the most enthusiastic effort for adoption.
Mr. Sandvik, question. So when you say this is presented to the courthouse, then, and I know we still have time left in the process, but one of the things we had determined that we were going to talk about here tonight was the subject of the supplements for our archery coaches. We've talked about this at length. I don't want to take up a lot of time going back over everything certainly that's already been presented to us, but as all of you know, it's something that I feel very strongly about. And I guess when I hear this about we're presenting it, even though it's not finalized, where does that put us in terms of making additions to this?
Well, typically, our general trend will be downward changes unless we become aware, and I don't think we'll become aware of anything as of April 18th that would cause us to have a massive increase. I was able to look at March numbers frantically before we gave you this on April 2nd, was it? Or this one's dated April 3rd. So I was able to tweak a few things based on my March numbers. I normally, as I look at April and May numbers, there are some additional things I should be able to tweak. General direction should be down. So if we put something in that increases, we still are probably trending down.
I'm not sure I'm following you with that.
From this 4/3/18 draft, as we go through the next 2 months, we will see there will be some areas we will be able to drop a little bit as I look at where we are year-to-date, end of April, end of May. That, okay, maybe some of the things I tried to provide contingencies for, I can lower some minor things. So if we made a change to the supplement and increased it somewhat, I think it would be obscured within those other changes. I don't think you're thinking anything.
We have time to get those solid numbers back before we actually make a decision.
Private Act makes us give them
Yes.
a copy of where we are at this point on the 23rd.
Yeah.
And when we actually meet with a joint in this room with Health and Ed and Budget and Finance is May the
22nd.
May 22. So there is still some window in there of almost 1 month. But we'll have to have it nailed real close because right after that they'll tell us yes or no pretty quickly. You have to deal with it.
That's the meeting at which we really need to try to present something where we're at that point where, okay, we're close enough they might accept. They'd like it a little lower, but they're not a comfort level, perhaps.
I certainly would like for us to have some more definitive numbers before we start looking at any of the supplements.
Well, excuse me, were you done? Mr.
No, I was just going to say, even though I think there's some already built in here.
Well, and I was going to say, with that being said, if you look at line item 44 on page 3 of 8, we're already putting into this budget $172,460 that's line itemed as recommended changes to supplements. And one safety supplement, topic, coaching, and athletic director supplements. So I would be of the mind that this would be the time to add the archery supplement and that we don't wait until it's going to be put under a bigger magnifying glass or scrutiny.
And let me look at something more.
Okay. I would like to know what the specifics of that number entail because I understand that there was a budget request put in that the board has not voted on that was a list of proposed changes of supplements that included a lot of increases and raises for certain coaches and additions of supplements for assistant drama, teacher, athletic director that weren't previously in the supplement budget at all, that total $85,000, and is that a part of this 172?
I'm sorry, I
No, that, please.
having trouble accessing, I'd hidden some lines in the file. And I thought when we were emailing back and forth today, and I was on the phone a lot catching up from being out 2 days. The item 45 is included in this draft of the budget. The archery supplements at.
Oh, I'm sorry, hadn't even seen that on the second page, okay.
So they are built in at that level to this draft we have. And the way Mr. Odom and I handled it is things were coming up for discussion. Unless it appeared there was a consensus not to put something in that y'all were bringing up, we put them in. So.
Let me ask this question then. You just handed us a draft dated April 3rd.
Did not, yes, it has there's probably a net $45,000 in changes that I didn't reconsolidate and present tonight.
Okay, the thing is that I'm coming up with a net of like 5 million, so I must be doing something wrong. The difference between 369 and 390.
Okay, if you look on page 4 of 4, the transfers. Page 4 of 4, the summary that has the bluish-purple numbers, there's a 4-page version. There's a 31-page version, and there's the 4-page version.
I'm on the 4-page version.
Okay, look on page 4,
Right.
the transfers. Transfers to other fund, 4,401,000.
Right.
I exclude those because those really aren't part of it. That's where we are moving basically fund balance to building program. I don't include that as part of the budget.
So the difference I should be looking for is between 365, 361, 693, and 390, 243.
Right.
That should be the same 25,000 that when I look at page 8 of 8.
No.
Now I'm looking at the new document tonight.
That document, we did not go through and update. We moved, Mr. Odom wanted to move those revenue changes to the same page that are unavoidable increases. So it's formatted differently. I did not go through and update all of the costs on that.
So these things on the 8 of 8 page that's dated April 18th are not in the 4-3 draft.
Yes, they
Okay.
are. They are in the draft, but when they're in this document, it's got the position is in at an estimated salary range. You know, a bachelor's and 4 or 5 for a teacher. And then you've got the benefits that consolidate up.
Let me ask it this way, because are all of these things in this thing?
Yes, they are.
Okay, then
But-
send this thing to the courthouse.
Well, you know, we can do that. But I will update for those minor little tweaks that we've done since then. And I don't think it's a $40,000 change.
Okay.
If it is, I'll make it less than 40.
So, Mr. Sandvik, just for my
Yes.
clarification then, and I apologize that I had missed that, flipping to the next page in the line item on 45 where you did have Archie
Yes.
coaching supplements in. Now, this was based on my recommendations from the last meeting. Of
4
course,
and
we've
6.
talked a little bit more as far as possibly distributing it a bit differently based on the recommendations from the archery coaches and elementary and so on and so forth. But I think the total number is pretty close to even what we were talking about with these others. So I just want to make sure I understand for the record.
I'm sorry, I
Okay,
thought you
that's okay.
understood that.
That we've got $82,550 in this proposed budget consideration that, for archery supplements that will be going to the courthouse on Monday.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, let me comment on that just a second, if I might. On page 3 of 4, the supplement increases were distributed, and it did not include a number of head coaches, but it did include assistant coaches and drama, chorus, a number of other items. I think we're okay. I believe we are. I don't know. If somebody wants something, you're welcome to give it to them. There was no archery increase because there was no archery supplement to increase, which is why it's on the next page. These were salaries and supplements that hadn't been touched in years. I don't know how many years. 10, maybe 15, maybe more. the amount has increased as the Bachelor in 5 increased, but that's minuscule when you're talking about 5% of that increase. So essentially, they got no raise whatsoever. Now I don't know if there's going to be any kind of motion on archery or not. That's
Well, I wonder then if it's even necessary, because these other supplements and raises, and some of them weren't raises, actually. The list also included additions that went from 0% to a certain percentage, assistant drama teacher, athletic directors. So if these were put in without it being necessary for any kind of motion or vote, and we've already got this line item built in to what's going to be presented, I don't see why it would be necessary to vote on archery supplements if we're not voting on the others.
I guess where I'm lacking, or what I'm looking for, where'd this total come from? Is that sheet you gave us?
Which sheet?
This 172,000,
Supplement page.
the additional.
Yeah, because the proposed changes that I was given were totaled about 85,000. So.
I gave you this at an earlier meeting.
Oh, thank you.
Did we vote on putting these these changes?
No, you have not. We just built it in the budget to see what the totals would look like.
Okay.
My knowledge is we hadn't even discussed these. This sheet right here.
I thought we did it.
Oh,
It may not have been I handed this out at another meeting.
I understand that, but we haven't discussed these changes here.
I think it came from, maybe, was it the committee you chaired or something?
right.
And he asked us to try to build it into the budget, and let's see what impact it has. So we're at the kind of the impact level. You know, unless you want to change that, it would reduce back to whatever those prior percentages were.
So this sheet right here, is that the 172,000 you're talking about?
Yes.
Did that include the, what about those the safety?
No, they're separate items.
There was one more safety coach.
Yeah, it's in that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but you got another line item for the other ones too.
The trainers.
Trainers, correct,
Trainers are a different line.
correct.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm not seeing a difference between the two sheets as far as the listings and the percentages. So I guess, help me, the slow group sometimes when it comes to numbers, but where did the difference then
Well,
with the 172
I
and
went
the 85?
from number of assistant coaches. So they're,
Oh, okay. So in other words,
so
the
I
numbers
went-
of those coaches, the head count increased?
yes, I went, the head count did not increase, but I went with the actual head count that we have. Got one of the high school supplement pages that are turned into payroll, counted the number of positions, took the percentages, added them up, and then
Okay.
times all of the schools, it was
Bit more than we,
plus benefits, $172,000. These things add up. I mean, when you've got this year a $365 million budget, it's very easy for things to cross 100,000, 200,000.
But our total supplement expenditure is a little over 3, is that correct?
You're asking
Including this?
athletic supplement piece. That's a figure that's been thrown around, so I'm close to it.
Check that.
Maybe close to 3 million.
That's correct.
Maybe a little under, but it's somewhere in that range.
I'm not, with this, I don't like
That's fine. I mean, this,
equivalent to 53 BS and 5 teaching positions. That's how I budgeted as a total percentage of BS and 5. That's how it adds up.
I perceive some changes that we will have to make at some point, even if we submit this presently, with the numbers that you're
I agree.
giving us now.
I think we'll probably have to raise it because of safety concerns that come from our safety meetings.
You have to have a 25% match on the safety monies coming from the state, but you can count in kind. So, with the money by the community or the district. So a lot of our SROs, of course, sheriff's budget, the other stuff, I think Rutherford County will be okay on the in-kind piece.
Okay, good.
Ms. Dursky did say some of the legislators did not like that matching provision for the non-recurring monies. It might not even make it, that requirement, but we should be, I talked to Mr. Kubley today, and we should be fine.
We as we sit through these meetings and what you told us individually, we try to build into the budget. If one of you said, come up with a cost for this, add it into the budget, so that what you have, I'd say it's best case scenario, but it's basically what people thought they may want added. That's what you've got at this point.
Guess
I
not.
will start with our fall meetings. As y'all make comments, that's when I start updating things for the next year.
I guess another question I've got, on the athletic director, where you've got, and I'm in favor of athletic director, you know, getting paid something. But I know we got some assistant principals that are acting athletic directors too. What are we gonna do on that?
Did you include assistant principals for the supplement on that?
I just budgeted total dollars for the supplement. Yeah.
But did you, in trying to get total dollars, did you count, like last night, Blackman Hines was here, he is an assistant principal. So did you put money in for him in that situation?
I did, because it was my understanding that that was what the proposal included, that an assistant principal could be a supplemented athletic director.
I think I can comment on that a little bit, and I have Ms. Bush researched that, and we were in good shape there, paying the assistant principal if if it did not put the assistant principal over the salary of the principal in the building, which it would not do most likely, and did not do at all at any school. And it was our feeling, the committee's feeling really, that the duties of an athletic director had just grown and grown and grown over the years, because instead of just having 7 or 8 sports, this sounds just really ridiculous when you say it out loud, but 7 or 8 sports in the early 70s and late 70s and early 80s when this was built, it's now approaching 20 sports. And if they do it right, we thought that, boy, it's a very small amount. I don't remember what it is, but 2 or 3%. We thought that was appropriate.
Just for clarity, it's 6%. But isn't it policy that we have to have an assistant principal as athletic director?
Job description.
Job description? Yeah. Okay. So this is always
High school, I think, only high school.
right. This is always an assistant principal, then, right?
To high schools? No, I
That's everywhere.
don't think so. I don't think so, everywhere, no. You had some that existed before you even hired a new one or something. In other words, job descriptions could have been different. One of the problems we ran into 3 or 4 years ago, and you have to be a little careful for this, you remember, it may have been 4 years ago or so, we wound up with the supplements, we wound up paying more to some positions than we are principals of school that were elementary or so that may have certain kids. So the whole thing kind of meshes together sometimes. It gets, is this fair, is it not fair? That's a whole different argument, but that happens.
I don't know the assistant, the athletic directors at every school, but Mr. Spurlock, I believe, is it Brad Cowan? Is he your assistant? He's the AD, and he's not an assistant principal. Barry Metzer at Riverdale is a baseball coach. He's not an assistant principal. He's athletic director. But I don't know about every other high school. I don't know whether they are or not. We already said Mr. Lawless what was an assistant principal and athletic director, but it hadn't always been that way. He hasn't always been athletic director.
Tim Tackett has a list of athletic directors, which we can get.
Well, you got middle school athletic directors too, correct?
Right.
Have we did anything for them?
I don't know the answer to that question, did we?
In your proposed, did you know where you counted middle or not, athletic director, in this figure?
No, we did, I believe, because I heard immediately from 3 principals from a middle school said, Mr. Jordan, please tell the committee not to give them a free period, which was appropriate and happened all the time, for athletic director duties. Because when you do that, it messes up our middle schools and messes up our schedule. And another teacher has to absorb those students. Somebody's got to teach them. And they asked me not to do that, so we did add in a supplement for them. That's correct. The athletic director, by the way, was, I hadn't given any thought to that at all. I don't know why, just not smart enough, I guess. But Mr. Tackett had, and this is really his baby. Beg pardon?
Is 4% for middle school sound?
3 or 4. I've already guessed wrong on the high school, so hate to say.
6 for the high school, and looking in my budget file, I think 4 for the middle school.
Okay.
That one's not on this sheet.
No, that one is not on this sheet. I think that
We need
came.
to add it if that's going to be on there.
So I guess if I'm understanding everything, looking at these figures, and I'm an athletic person, we're going to increase supplements $250,000, correct?
Yes, sir.
Let me just tell you what I see coming down the pike. On elementary, we don't have any supplements right now.
No, we do not.
I can just tell you, coming down the road, you're going to have cheerleading, you're going to have basketball, you're going to have soccer, everything. I just want the board to understand that when it comes down the road here, that we're going to have to deal with it. And I don't have any. I want to make sure everybody understands. I don't have anything. I'm in favor of archery, but I can just see it as a snowball deal from elementary. It looks like middle school and high school, we've got about every sport you can think of right now. And I'm sure if something comes along, something else will be added. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that. I've seen these things since I've been on the board, seen these things escalate over the years, and this is probably the biggest one I've seen, total-wise, in one lick. So.
And this may not be a year we can do that, folks. That's kind of go back to where I started. We very well may be in a status quo situation. And so, like, we got numbers tonight. We included everything any board member or somebody said we'd like to do this, and then what we through instruction, others estimated teacher growth and that sort of stuff. But, I mean, I maintain a file in there about where would we cut if we had to, and it comes to several $1 million. But basically what it does is put you back to just deal with growth and you get nothing else. I mean, that's what it is. Not hard to tell.
I had debated taking this and striking through in red on things that I've, based on my previous history, felt we would probably not be able to keep in by the time we finish this process.
And I think that's what what board members need to do is look at it again. And
yeah.
What are you, if we have to give up, what are you willing to say, well, let's give it up? I mean, it's just like at home, you may want this or that, but sooner or later you have to say, I want it, but I may not be able to get it just yet. As those revenues changes with year to year, then some years where you have the high growth we've had for really probably 4 years or so. Then you hit kind of this year with uncontrolled insurance, you know, retirements, and BEP changes, and then there you are. We wouldn't even be worrying about this discussion if them three things hadn't hit. Well, that's the difference.
What about the restrooms, concession stands at Smyrna Laverne? Is that included in this?
Well, that would be a building. That has to be on the building plan, the capital plan. So, Mr. Carty has a capital plan. 'Cause here's the other thing we talked about this time too. We can talk about it now. He talked about taking some of the capital monies and maybe taking 2% or so, and maybe used it for safety if we need to. Now that, you know, with that, is it 6 cents dedicated now?
I think it is.
Or to his capital improvements, which is the paving, the roofing, and that sort of thing. He talked about in looking at this, if they'll leave us still that 6 cents in this. Of course, one of the dangers we run into every time our budget's a little over, they start saying, well, we'll take it out of your capital monies, but then you have roofs that have to start leaking and stuff, and you have trouble. We talked about if we could make it through, then set aside, when we do our safety stuff, we see what we need. Maybe we want to take a year or two to dedicate some monies out of the capital improvements for just safety, and yet still leave 4 cents or something for roofs and repaving. You still thinking that way, I think?
That's what we have. We put $1 million in there, and we were hoping that the safety fund that's coming from the state would fund the rest of that to go around and put the card readers on every school so that we would have better control on the doors. There's so many keys that float around that you never know who has a key to the school because they don't get turned in. They're very hard to track. So this way, if someone leaves or someone's dismissed, we can go right to the computer, take their name out, and their card doesn't work anymore. So that's what we were thinking on that. I think that would be one of the best moves that we could make safety-wise. And then we're on the new schools, we're looking at strategically placing some bollards to keep people from driving in through the doors and things in the front. So, but that doesn't have anything to do with the keys, but we're trying to constantly upgrade our safety stuff.
They usually do not question us on this monies for the capital improvement. We have to present them our plan to how we plan to spend it for that year, and that's what y'all see as his project. But typically the commission doesn't question us if they say if that's what you think you need, you know, as long as you stay within these pennies we're giving you, you can do that. So that's not built into this budget because the capital budget is a separate document.
I will have the cafeteria, the centralized cafeteria budget, and the capital projects budget. I wasn't quite ready on capital projects, and especially to have the revenue, but we'll have those at our May 1st meeting.
Well, and the centralized cafeteria, that's the federal food service home, so any money there has to be spent in that area. So again, that's another thing we have no control over, really, other than the price of the meal to make up the difference.
I certainly understand the conversation that we're having because it's appropriate to plan, you know, for alternatives and worst case scenarios and such as that. But I sure hope that when we present this, and in essence we're kind of presenting it because everything we're talking about is getting viewed by a whole lot of people, I just want to be enthusiastic and excited about the plans that we have to move forward, and those plans require this budget for us to be successful and accomplish and have a school system that will continue to be the #1 driving force for economic development in Rutherford County, continued growth in Rutherford County. What do they talk about first in the Chamber of Commerce? Our outstanding school system. And then they say, And because of that outstanding school system, we've got these new employers coming in here. We've got this housing happening. We've got all of this stuff happening. But the driving force is what we're accomplishing in this school system. And in order to do that, this is what we need. And I just want to enthusiastically present that to our funding body and hope that they catch the fire and want to continue that kind of exciting accomplishment in our school system. If we have to deal with something later on down the road, we'll deal with it. And I certainly appreciate the staff. I hear a lot of plans I got in my drawer, you know, if something happens. Great. I'm happy about that. But boy, I don't want that to be our public perception. That, you know, if you can possibly do this, here's what we'd like. No, this is what we want, and it's going to be awesome.
I agree with you. I hope they catch fire too, but I also hope taxpayers catch fire too.
Sure.
I can tell you, I've been on this thing long enough, I can project what's going to go on. I guess, Mr. Chairman, I got one more question for
Yes.
Mr. Sandvig. Looking at these sheets, item 33 there, RTI coaches.
Yes, sir.
That's the high school.
It was at the high school originally, we had it listed at 64.5,
It was,
salary wise.
Yes, and I'm sorry, when I went back and actually looked at the RTI coaches we had, at the high school level, they had a higher level degree and experience, and I had left off the RTI supplement, and just trying to look at the average for what we put in that category of employee. And
we're catching up. How many pilot RTIs high schools do we have this year, right now? So this is really the other four that.
I don't have a problem with it. I was just curious what the difference was in
I looked at the actual cost, yes.
the salaries, so.
Yeah, and then if the ones that are coming out of title, for those, I had exact costs for the people, the employees we have this year, so. Yeah, you remember which line item they are?
Yeah, that's a supplanting issue.
Right, that's a planning.
You don't have control over that either, unless you take all the others away.
And I don't think we're, in any of these items we've included, we're being, I think we can make a case for all of them. Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, what I was thinking about, because we do, what you're talking about, voting on supplements and that sort of thing. So when we come back to the May 1st meeting, we probably need to put in there as a motion, because you're going to have to, if you're going to do it, you're going to have to quantify it. Do we not? Do we change that number or what? At some point, we got to make that decision. So Mr. Sandvig says either do this or don't do this, and kind of deal with it, and that's where we are. At some point, we got to decide.
Any worth 600,000?
I don't know if it'll go that high this year or not. That's what Lisa's waiting on, that kind of information, working it out, trying to get comfortable working with the property tax assessor. It could hit 600 for us this year. I do not know. The other concern, kind of, and the commissioners will talk about this, who are on budget committee, it kind of looks as though in the reappraisal year we don't get our normal growth even often if we drop back to the certified rate. That the normal historic growth we see from year to year is down.
It's mainly new properties coming on.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The new.
Which is always frustrating. So.
Well, if this has to be submitted, did you say the 23rd?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And this is what you will submit right now?
And again, plus those few changes I have made. Yeah.
Okay, very minor, you said.
I can give you copies tomorrow evening.
All right. Board members, if there's something on this sheet, a column that you want to add something to, or there's something on this sheet that you want to subtract something from, we're here. We can do that tonight. Or we can wait until after it's submitted, but we won't know any more probably on May 1st as to what their reaction is going to be.
We'll have the revenue side.
But we should know,
Right, okay.
much better.
That's fair, that's fair.
Much better is,
Maybe the gap is less. That's my hope.
Yeah, mine too. But anyway, I'm just giving this board an opportunity to whatever they want to do. Is there anything else, Mr. Sandy?
no, sir.
Mr. Director, anything else on this topic?
We'll submit basically what you've seen for our expenditures, unless you want to change it, and we'll work from there. Which is what's happening all over the state of Tennessee.
Right.
I read school districts have adopted a budget, and they couldn't have had state monies, any guesstimate, they're guessing like we are, until you get your number.
Remember tomorrow night, 4:30? Other than that, board, is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I know it's a budget meeting, but I'm wondering if the director perhaps couldn't give us an update on, we were talking a little bit earlier about what went on today at the legislature in the status of the testing. I know Mr. Evans just sent a message out to everyone, but I think especially if there are public out there watching, might be interested in hearing the most up-to-date update.
Okay. Basically, there's not anything that's changed about our requirements to do the testing. So everything's in place. We did kind of take a back away today, and our people concentrated on what the state called recovery. Recovery is every time when a student has a laptop in front of them, that student signs on that computer, and their answers are downloaded to that computer's cache in there. So if you come back on tomorrow to pick up where you were on the testing, because we had to have the pauses, then in some instances it didn't automatically pop up. So you had to run the recovery operation to try to bring it back up. We had still, in some of the recovery operations and some of the things today, still had difficulty seeing it come back up. At Laverne today, they did some testing with some of the students, kicked them off. We saw, which is the same thing we saw the day before. There's some students said that some of the things they had, they actually lost what they had done the day before. The question is it really in that cache somewhere that you have to run a recovery to bring it back up, or is it really gone? And that was the same question that was asked the commissioner several times today. What's happening? Everybody's saying the same thing, but I think what you'll see tomorrow is there's a significant number of systems that kind of backed away from doing mostly new testing today. And Knox County backed away, Shelby County backed away, Rutherford County backed away, Williamson County backed away. I don't know what Davidson did for sure. They may have. So what'll be the real test is tomorrow when everybody comes back up and says, okay, Questar, did you get some of these glitches worked out? But I think we'll know by 8:30 or 9 tomorrow what we have. But I don't know whether they've made any substantial changes in it or not.
Can we do an office pool?
I know what I would guess. But the amendments they're considering, Ms. Moore, and the things that I was hearing the representatives and senators say today, they're saying our recommendation is that you do not try to use these for accountability. But the commissioner didn't agree to it. There's no legislation that says that yet. So for Pete's sakes, we want to tell our students, hey, this may or may not go away. Do your very, very best. It represents your score. And since it has to be part of their average, your GPA is at stake some with these tests. The letter grades, she was questioned specifically today about letter grades. Is that going away or be adjusted? And not at this point. She said that until they get more information, they consider the test valid and could be used for the other. ESSA requires them to identify the bottom 5% of schools across the state as this fall, the new ones come on. And so she said they would be taking this test data and doing that. So I did not hear anything that told me don't test, because everything I heard is right now we're on track to finish up. And they added 3 days more to the testing window because schools have paused and because kids were kind of getting kicked off and that sort of thing and having to come back, losing time. So they added 3 days to the testing window.
So did we have those 3 days to give? I mean, just thinking back again to schools, the principals that we'd already heard from of, hey, you know, we're already maxed out, there's no room to breathe. If something were to happen, we don't have any extra labs or days.
Well, that is kind of the issue that you run into because just right after that, AP testing, which we have no control over, that's the national AP exam days, it still doesn't get into those AP exam days, but your kids that are testing on TN Ready are not going to have to jump right over into their possible AP exams. Your CTE are taking their certification exams. That's kind of like the AP that hits right on top of it. So there are really going to be some exhausted students and teachers at the end of this cycle between TN Ready and the AP and the certification CTE. So, but we plan to go back into full testing, tomorrow. Through our 5th grade that's doing paper and pencil, seems to be working fine. They're kind of on track, getting it done. And one of your differences is you can take every 3rd grader in your school and put a paper and pencil test in front of them, do it all at once. But when you're having to go into labs, that there's, you got 80 computers, you got 80 lab computers, then you got to pull them out in groups of whatever lab capacity you have. And we had that calculated. We have more computers than what the state said you needed to accomplish this. If you were in a district that had one-on-one, you're probably in a better shape. And I hope all of this we're running into doesn't keep us from implementing what we showed with you, that 2-to-1, trying to use some ending fund balance this year to go ahead and order those so we can have those middle school next year to do it. I hope it doesn't get into that we can go ahead with that plan because we need to.
Thank you.
I'll send you an email in the morning, probably about 9:30 or something, after I see.
There's always the Russians, if we want to blame somebody. Seems to be a popular thing to do these days. Anything else, Board?
The really tough question I asked today was, Questar, if you said you were hacked, did you turn it into the TBI that you've been hacked? Because this could be a criminal charge if they can find out who hacked it. And the Questar's thing was, no, we haven't turned it in yet. The question was, why not? So I think everything is.
Someone had pointed out on social media yesterday that since they're a nationwide company, that it would be an FBI report, but I'm assuming if they said no, that meant they didn't report it to them either, so.
Anything else, Board? Thank you for your input, questions. Ms. Stanvik, thank you very much. Okay, we're 4:30 tomorrow afternoon. We're adjourned. Thank you.